Come with me on a grueling journey to the Antarctic for my review of Ernest Shackleton's incredible Voyage. Hey, welcome back to another YouTube book review. This is going to be second in hopefully what is a long list of full YouTube book reviews. Hey, how you doing? Of course, please let me know if you're watching these, and please let me know what kind of feedback you have for these. Thank you so much for being here, though. But yeah, Ernest Shackleton's incredible Voyage. This is the first nonfiction book that I have read in a long time. Well, at least, nonfiction. Maybe the first nonfiction book that's about like an event in history that I've ever read outside of school and education. But it was recommended to me by the time I edit this, I'll be able to tell you the user on TikTok who recommended this book. But for now, user. And I want to say thank you very much to user for recommending this book to me. I really enjoyed it. It was a great read for whenever I was driving. It was a great read for whenever I was walking on the treadmill, and just generally whenever I was doing things around the house and I got to listen to an audiobook. It wasn't too terribly long. It's about 11 hours, which I think is kind of a nice little sweet spot. Between 8 and 12 hours is kind of my favorite audiobook length. But it was recommended to me because I was asking for survival type books to read and or listen to, and this really just absolutely scratched that itch. So before we get into anything else, let's just do a summary of the book, and then we'll talk about what I thought was good, which is a lot, and what I thought was bad, which is barely anything. And I won't even say I thought it was bad. It's just stuff that kept it from being a 5-star book for me. But anyway, a summary of the novel. Ernest Shackleton was an explorer in the early 1900s, who his dream was to cross Antarctica, cross the whole continent. So he set up this voyage where he would gather everyone into a ship. He had the ship specially built by, I forget where it was they built the ship, but it was like the best shipbuilders at the time. It was one of the last wooden sailing, it was one of the last ships of its kind, but it was, like a 3-mast sailing ship that they took to Antarctica. The plan was to land on Antarctica, cross the continent, and then get on another boat on the other side of Antarctica, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, Antarctica is very cold. They gathered, I think it was 70-something dogs for dog sledding, and I think the crew ended up being somewhere around 30 men, if I'm not, again, the numbers. I finished it about a week ago, so I'm a little bit foggy on the numbers. But suffice it to say, that crew and a bunch of dogs, plenty of supplies sailing down there. Well, of course, as you know, Antarctica is but is a lot of ice. And you're going to have to sail through a lot of icy seas to get there. Well, not even a couple months into their voyage, they get entrapped in sea ice off the coast of Antarctica. They're hundreds of miles from land in either direction, and ice forms around their ship. And eventually, after doing a whole winter on the ice, so the boat freezes up as winter is coming, they do a whole winter. They are on this boat for all of winter. They're hunting seals, I don't know, plural of seals, also seals. They're hunting seals. They are killing penguins. They are cooking on a blubber stove. And, they've got plenty of food, they've got plenty of supplies, but their boat is stuck. And they're hoping that eventually the sea ice will crack and they'll be able to continue sailing. But it just never cracks the right way. So they do a whole winter on the ice, infinite darkness on the ice, the long night of the poles. Eventually winter breaks, spring comes, but the thaw never happens the way it's supposed to. When it finally does happen, instead of setting the ship free, the ice breaks up to the point where pressure from a distance presses the ice into the ship, destroys their ship. So they have to disembark their ship. They're now like 6 to 8 months, I think, into their voyage. The numbers get a little hazy. But if you thought that was uncomfortable, or they had been uncomfortable, yet they had not even started being uncomfortable. So they get off the ship, take their supplies, get off their ship, take their lifeboats, lifeboats and other ship things off all the supplies, hop off all the dogs, and then they make camp on the ice nearby. Eventually, the ship goes down. Before the ship goes down, they're able to salvage enough wood to build 3 different vessels. They've got plenty of seal meat. They're surviving quite well. All of the men are writing journals. That's how we get all this information. And if you listen to the book, you're going to get acquainted with several different characters. There are some very endearing men who went on this trip. But Ernest Shackleton, the leader, it's his show, and really the reason he's such a compelling figure is he kind of had this superpower for leadership. Men wanted to follow, and he just, even though he made a lot of mistakes, or in hindsight he made a lot of mistakes, he led well. So anyway, they're off the ice, they're camping. They camp through the summer on the ice. Everything's fine. They're just waiting for a break. They're trying to decide whether they're going to, where they're going to try to walk to. But eventually, just every plan they make falls apart. The ice begins to crack. They can't walk. The boats are too heavy. They can't take the boats where they need to go. Their goal is to take the boats across and get in the water and sail again. But it's just and try to make it to an island so they can send for help. None of that works. They end up staying on the ice for several months. Eventually, they force themselves to move. They begin carrying the boats or dragging the boats again, and they camp out on the ice some more later on until eventually that ice slab breaks and they have to launch the boats. And they're able to launch the boats and get out of the ice. Now, again, this is months and months and months of freezing, at least freezing temperatures, or at most freezing, getting down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, below zero kind of stuff. Snow, we're camping on ice, everything's wet all the time. The descriptions of just wet sleeping bags that these men, I truly don't know how they survived it. I love to camp. This channel is called Open Book Outdoors, and it's supposed to be, at least 20% camping, but I don't get to camp as much as I get to read. But the idea of a wet sleeping bag in sub-zero temperatures, I don't know how they survived. They survived primarily off of the body heat they produced from eating, and it was just as hell on earth as it is, and what you're picturing. A lot of their journals, they kept positive a lot more than you would think, and there were times where they were, freezing, eating blubber, eating seal meat for the 50th week on end, and they would say, like, one could get used to this type of living if there wasn't such the danger of never making it home. It was just different men, tougher men, way tougher than me. But they're on the ice cracks, and eventually they have to launch the boats, and they're on the boats for 5 days at one point, without sleep. The boats are not big enough for them to sleep in. They're freezing. Many of the men are getting frostbite. One guy has a heart attack while he's on the boat. That's not funny, but it's just the way it's so offhandedly described. There's no water to drink because there's no ice around anymore where they're at. They're trying to find these particular islands. There's one character that rises above the rest. His name is Worsley, I believe, and he becomes the navigator, and really he is their voyage, and the as little failure as they see is all because of his ability to navigate using a sextant. But they're trying to get to these different islands. Eventually they find an island. They land on an island called Elephant Island. They hope that they're saved, but really the only inhabitable places on this island are two rocky beaches where they eventually land. And they know that winter again is coming. They know that the place they are is in danger of, being frozen and high tide and all this. They're running low on supplies. And so they decide they have to send one boat into the sea to get to South Georgia, the place where they launched from originally over almost 2 years ago. And they have to try to make it back there to go get help in a 5-man vessel with a sail that they outfit to do a little bit more of a long-range thing, but they all kind of agree, like, no one has ever crossed this most dangerous sea on planet Earth in anything like this. We will probably die. But of course, Ernest Shackleton, he's in there every single time. He is leading. So they go. While they're gone, the men are just like, hey, so we're going to stick around here and freeze almost to death. But they are able to survive. There's a point eventually, just a little tidbit, there's a point, things get so bad, there's frostbite, people are losing the ability to walk. They're living in overturned boats, like laying on one another. It's insane. There's a point where they get so thirsty and there's no water for them to drink that they have frozen seal meat that they're told to chew, so that as they chew, the blood will come out of the meat when it thaws and they can hydrate out of that. Like, it is the most bitter survival situation these guys are in. But just the way the book is written, it's never described that they gave up. They're just always like, whenever we get home, But of course, Ernest Shackleton and his men make it to South Georgia, but they're on the wrong side of the island, so they have to cross the whole island on foot by climbing in the snow on the mountains. Eventually, they do make it back to the port that they launched from. They call for help, and eventually, a whole crew is sent back to save the rest of the guys. And believe it or not, no one died. But it was just very good. I know I've done a poor job of summarizing it, but every time you hope something's going to go their way, it doesn't. And every time you think that's going to be where they give up, they don't. And that's what's special about this book, I think. So let's get into the good stuff about this book. It is a survival tale. I love a survival tale. I love a story about the indomitable human spirit, a story that says, hey, you thought that the human animal had this limit. Actually, it's way up here. Like, when pushed to its limits, the human being can go further. And there's so many stories, real stories, where that's the case. And this is one of those stories, and I just love reading about that. It gives you hope. It gives you, whenever you feel like you're in a bad situation, it gives you the ability to be like, wait a second, these men did this. I can survive. I can make it through my workday. I can whatever. Very good book. Also, it was a real epic adventure, right? Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed the idea of men getting on a boat and saying, we are going to go do this thing, even if it kills us. And that thing is actually not necessary. It's just adventure. It's just saying you can do it. And that's really cool. I thought the story was well paced. Of course, it is a real thing. So as far as pacing is concerned, it's hard to change up pacing, but it for a real event, I was never getting bored. I was getting tired because I was always hearing a further description of the torment of these men. But, I enjoyed the way it was paced. And true stories are cool, especially when it concerns just the unwillingness to give up that a human being has. Many human beings have, and it just sucked me in. The voice, the reader was good. The narrator, I don't remember his name, but it was very good. He did a couple different voices for all the men, but he didn't overdo it. And I was just compelled. I was compelled by the way it was written. I felt like I knew these men by the time that we were done, and of course, by the time it was over, I was ready to jump on a boat with Mr. Shackleton and go on a new adventure. If I had to say anything bad about the book, there's a part at the beginning where the author explains how the voyage was set up, and he explains how everyone was recruited, and it's probably an hour and a half of just setup of the voyage. And while that's true, and while that is good information, and I'm glad I know it, it did get a little bit boring. So if I had to say one con, it's that at the beginning it was a little bit slow to start, because I really just wanted to get to the survival stuff. But as far as history, it was good. Give it 4 stars on Goodreads, because I just don't give out 5 stars very easily. And yeah, it was good, really good book, and I hope you enjoyed this review. Of course, as always, any feedback you can give me. If there are books that you want me to read, please let me know. Just love to talk to you via this medium. So thank you for watching this whole review, and I'll I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.